Golly gee, it's me, Onion Creature, and this is my YouTube channel where I bring you the top quality content that you so desire in your life. Today's video will be on the topic of the Kirby video game series, a subject of which I have made many videos. This will be yet another one, but this one's a little bit different from most of the other ones in that it is baseless speculation. Don't you just love that? Basically, the parameters I've set is that this is going to be covering the next 5 or so years, basically until this point 5 years from now, where we have seen the 35th anniversary of the series. And I'm going to go through just like what sort of a roadmap could look like based on, you know, series trends and where Nintendo and HAL Laboratory are going, and just where the brand as a whole is at this moment, to put it in a corporate sense. It's not going to be an exhaustive list, just sort of some ideas for where I think Kirby series could go in some alternate universe, or, you know, potentially our universe. I might be 100% correct, you know, it's happened before. And we're going to start off with a few downers of things that I'm fairly, I'll put money on this. I'm gonna put $5, betting $5 right now that nothing on this list is going to happen. Where that money shall go if I lose this bet, I know not. Number one, there will not be a Kirby Warriors game. The Dynasty Warriors series has had a few crossovers with Nintendo, and it's basically just been Fire Emblem and Zelda, and nothing beyond that, which is a little sad. I think that's a bit of a wasted opportunity. Nonetheless, I don't think there's going to be a Kirby version of that within the next 5 years. Past that, who knows, but for the next 5 years, I'm going to say not happening. This is another one it's a bit of a bold one, but I feel confident. There will not be a new AAA 2D game within the next 5 years. What I mean by that is a full retail price, you know, $60. Think Star Allies, Return to Dreamland. There will not be a new 2D game, and I think that's because the series at this point, it's growing into the 3D space. Clearly, that is where there's the most sales potential. I think that's kind of just a fact at this point, that the future of the Kirby series has far more sales potential by making 3D games. I think that has been proven pretty well now, and I'd say that's a good thing on a personal level. Of course, I still love the 2D games, and I would love to get more, even, you know, soon, but doesn't seem super likely. I think development efforts are going to be focused on 3D titles for the time being, and personally I'm for that. This is a sad one, I'll admit, but Waddle Dee will not be added to Super Smash Bros. And I'm assuming there's not going to be any more DLC for Smash Ultimate, or there might be like a new Smash Bros. Game within the next 5 years. Not super likely, but technically possible. Either way, I'm going to say Bandana Waddle Dee is not going to be there, because that's just not bound to happen. And that's just the state of things. Another thing, a lot of talk about Nintendo films since the release of the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Personally, though, I think that a Kirby movie is a far-off possibility if that were to ever happen. And honestly, I think it very much could happen, but it will not be released or announced within the next 5 years at the very least. And that's disregarding any time in the future, you know, 10 years, any time after 5 years from now, you know, 10 years, 15 years, maybe that'll happen then. But at this point, I'm going to say not yet. Last one, this is another one that gives me a heavy heart to say, which is, of course, Kirby Air Ride 2, I'm going to say, is not happening within the next 5 years. It is what it is. I think it's just not that likely, and that's unfortunate. We'll launch into the main portion of the video. I'll go year by year and just state the major Kirby adjacent events that will happen within that year, based on my predictions, and these are just my predictions, not based on anything in particular, generally just where I think is likely for the series to go. So obviously that leaves quite a lot of room for error, but you know, we'll see. I'd love to come back in the future and revisit this video and see what I got wrong and or right. So we'll launch into this next section. 2023, no new games or announcements. I'm pretty sure about this. I feel like HAL Laboratory spent a lot of their effort getting games ready for release on the anniversary. That seems to be the case based on my perception of their activity in the past year. And so I think that nothing is going to be ready for this calendar year, and that's fine by me because we've gotten quite a lot of Kirby content recently, so that's enough to hold me over for, you know, quite some time. Game Boy games and Game Boy Advance games will continue to release on NSO this year, including, of course, Kirby Tilt and Tumble and Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, and I'm quite sure we'll get to Kirby Nightmare and Dreamland, as well as the other Kirby Game Boy games and spin-offs such as Kirby Block Ball, Pinball Land, etc. So those are pretty safe ones, but trust me, they'll get a little more crazy as we move on here. This is my prediction for 2024. A sequel to Kirby and the Forgotten Land will be announced in June for release in the following year. It will be released on the successor to the Nintendo Switch. The main mechanic will be a negative world with inverted colors and mechanics in which Kirby cannot inhale enemies, and it features a heavy amount of puzzle solving. This will be a $70 release. I'm making this prediction as well. This is sort of a side tangent, but I'm gonna predict that for the next Nintendo console, game prices on a whole will go up to 70. I think we will get a handful of games released at 60, but by and large, most AAA Nintendo releases, I'm gonna say now, will be $70. And Tears of the Kingdom was testing the waters for that, and it was clearly a success. So it seems very unlikely to me that Nintendo will not raise their prices overall, that's a conversation for another day. So that is my major prediction for 2024. I think apart from that, it will be a quiet year. You might think it's a little soon to get a sequel to Forgotten Land or a follow-up in that same vein in terms of 3D gameplay, but you know what? I really have confidence in the development team at HAL Laboratory in terms of their speed and competence at development, and I think with the framework they've built from Forgotten Land, they should be able to get a sequel out in a pretty reasonable amount of time. I think 3 years, I guess it would be, by 2025. That should be enough, frankly, knowing them. You look at the time frame from Triple Deluxe to Planet Robobot. Planet Robobot, you know, I think a lot of people consider that a pretty great improvement from Triple Deluxe in some ways, which is, you know, that's a fair assessment. The release window between those two games was not that large, so I think this is viable. You know, it's HD development, it's 3D development, so it's presumably more complex, but I think they have the manpower and the skill to accomplish that. And, you know, I'm gonna predict a spring release for that. That just seems like the safest bet. New 3D game is released. I'm gonna say this will have a similar reception to Forgotten Land in that it will be really well regarded. I think we could potentially even see a Triple Deluxe to Planet Robobot situation where Planet Robobot is even more well regarded. You know, always a chance for that. I really only see HAL Laboratory improving. That tends to be the case, so it's a safe bet, honestly. There will probably be some complaints about a $70 price tag for a Kirby game, but frankly, I do not care. My next prediction is a little spicy. This is something that has been a long time coming, which is a re-release of GameCube games on a wide scale, which has not happened ever, sadly. But I think the time is now. They're running short on Nintendo 64 games. Game Boy games, they could definitely keep that going for quite some time with Game Boy GBA, but past that, you know, there aren't really that many obvious consoles to reach for other than, you know, if you wanted to go third-party consoles like more Sega stuff. But you can't really do DS that easily. You can't do 3DS that easily. GameCube would be the next best bet, and assuming the next Switch is more powerful, you could make it exclusive to the newer version of the Switch, since emulation will presumably be easier if it's a more powerful system. I could see that happening. You know, we already have a GameCube emulator running on the Switch with, you know, the re-release of Super Mario Sunshine. So I think that's going to happen, and alongside it, I'm going to say Kirby Air Ride will be a launch game. I think that's a perfect game to have at launch for a GameCube online service. The multiplayer of that game is pretty well renowned. I don't think they would have like anything like Smash Bros. Melee at launch. There's other multiplayer GameCube games. We have Double Dash, of course, and a few others, but I think Air Ride is one that would be extremely exciting and could really reinvigorate that game in a modern setting. So yeah, I think that's gonna happen. And 2025 seems like the soonest that I would expect that to happen. Kirby Fighters 3 releases. This will be a 3D game in the vein of Kirby Fighters 2, of course, but with gameplay stylings based around the Forgotten Land formula, in which, you know, characters are in 3D, they do the dodge roll, etc. They have abilities which are from that game, and also the successor to Kirby and the Forgotten Land, whatever that may be titled, and it will have abilities from those and characters from that. But of course, the main focus will be the various Kirby abilities, and I think it will be slightly more well received than the previous Kirby Fighters games, which have not been super popular in terms of critical reception or fan reception. And I think this will be just a little more exciting just because it's in 3D. I think I'll predict a $30 price point for this. That's $10 more than Kirby Fighters 2. And about $20 more than Kirby Fighters 1. And I think the content will justify that, and it'll be a little bit more of an exciting release. Yeah, I think that'll go over fairly well, and it will have online, but unfortunately I'm also going to predict the online will die off fairly quickly. That just seems to be inevitable with these online Kirby games, is that the online community dies off very quickly, which is sad. My next prediction, Kirby Cafe announces a location for Super Nintendo World. Japan will be first, with other regions to follow. I just think this makes too much sense. I don't personally think a Kirby Land area of Nintendo World is super likely at this point in terms of Kirby's popularity in relation to other Nintendo franchises like Zelda. It's definitely getting up there. It's, you know, continuing to increase in popularity. I just don't see it as a theme park level status at this point, sadly. I would love that to be the case, of course, but a Kirby Cafe, I could definitely see that just as a relatively small attraction, but something that, you know, would be very exciting. Kirby as a series has a lot of charm and appeals to fans as well as those who are unfamiliar with the series, so it could potentially create new fans. Yeah, I would just really love to have a Kirby Cafe in the US. This seems like a pretty decent vein to do it, you know? I mean, why not? Next prediction. This is just a little thing that I have thought of. There will be an explicit reference to the Kirby series of video games in the Super Mario Bros. Movie 2. 2026, that is the absolute minimum time required for a sequel to the Super Mario Bros. Movie to be made. Maybe I'm being a little hopeful with that in terms of it releasing that soon, especially with industry factors such as the writer's strike, which is delaying basically every film. You know, this movie hasn't even been announced yet. I really cannot see a sequel not happening. It kind of has to, based on the film industry, from what I know of it. If something is that successful, they're very much going to want to make a sequel and going to make it as fast as possible, hopefully not compromising on quality, of course. I think it's going to happen, and with the amount of Nintendo references in the first film, I think a Kirby reference very well could happen, and I think not even just like a little cameo, I think something a little more. I have not come up with the exact manner that might be, but you know what? I'm going to plant my flag there and say that that will happen. This is when the 35th anniversary is going to take place. This should be a good year for the Kirby series. I don't know if it'll live up to the 30th anniversary, but it should still be pretty cool. The Kirby anime will release via streaming internationally. I don't know if this will be via Netflix, perhaps Hulu, one of the other thousands. It just makes sense to make that more readily available. Sure, the 35th anniversary, that seems like a pretty decent time to do that. The Kirby Music Fest will return, and it'll be live streamed yet again. I think that, you know, having a musical performance for these different anniversary occasions is just truly wonderful. So I'd love to see the tradition continue. This is probably the biggest announcement for the year. We will have a remake of Kirby Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot as a double pack. It won't be as enhanced as Return to Dreamland was in terms of visuals, you know, updated UI and controls. But yeah, apart from that, I think it'll be a pretty straightforward HD version. I think re-releasing the 3DS games is just a fantastic idea, because from the GameCube onward, those games aren't really playable on modern systems except by ports, because they're on systems like the Nintendo DS and 3DS and Wii and GameCube, which are not on any Nintendo Switch Online subscription. They really do have to like re-release those games in order to get them on the Switch or the Switch successor, So I think that's going to happen for some of the more recent games that have not been released on Switch, of course. And we got just a few wacky ones to round it off for this year. That'll be the only release in 2027, but there will be a few announcements. There's going to be a motion-controlled game developed by WayForward. Why? I don't know. I thought of it and I said, that sounds like a prediction that's weird enough that it very well might happen. WayForward, of course, a recent collaborator with Nintendo on Advance Wars Reboot Camp, which I think did very well. It was at the top of the charts for quite some time, and the North American eShop reception seems to be very positive. So I think that they will work together again, and some random, unexpected Kirby spin-off seems like a decent thing to do in a few years' time. There will be a new 3D 2D hybrid game announced in September. With this, I'm thinking something along the lines of Sonic Colors or Super Mario 3D World, where it sort of switches between 2D and 3D, and that'll be the main gimmick of that title, is sort of merging the Kirby and the Forgotten Land formula with the Kirby's Return to Dreamland formula, so mixing 2D and 3D. Seems like a decent direction to go once they have a more solid foothold into the 3D game design space, is return to some 2D elements, which Mario did actually with Mario Galaxy, had some 2D portions, and that'll be announced in a September Nintendo Direct. I'm only going up through March of 2028 because that's how they counted the 30th anniversary, was like the beginning of 2022 to the end of March of 2023, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess they'll do the same thing, and that weird spin-off developed by WayForward will release, and that'll be $50. Not a full price game, but not a budget title either, somewhere in the middle. That's my predictions for the next 5 years or so of Kirby. Will they be correct? We shall have to wait and see. But yeah, I thought this would be a little more fun than just predicting the next year, because frankly, I really don't see too much happening within just the next year. So I think broadening it to the next 5 years makes it a little more exciting. Love getting back to making more videos. It's been a minute, but hope to make more soon. One more thing before I go. Cat.